Hello everyone. For this project I bought some rough cut lumber to build a privacy screen at our patio. Right here you can see I set up the rough cut lumber the way we thought we were going to want them for this privacy screen. You can see the rough cut 2x4s spaced out probably around 1.5 to 2 inches each. And when you start to look at this and the number that it would take, it looks like we're building a solid wall. Not very decorative. So we got to scrap this. The new plan is to now cut this out of this 5 foot by 5 foot 16 gauge sheet. I'm going to cut it in half so it's a little easier to handle, but also fits nicely on my plasma table. We'll use the same pattern that I used for building the pool gate. So it's this palm leaf pattern, and what I did is I just changed the amount of material cut out on this so it's a little bit smaller, leaving a little bit more metal behind to give a little bit better privacy in the screen. So I'm just using an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel, and I'm running along this chalk line that I've snapped on there so I can get it material cut in half. The line itself doesn't have to be all that perfect. I'm going to end up putting it on the inside edge of a 2x4 that I'm going to cut, so it'll slide in and hold it into place and hide any holes in that edge. So you can see the palm pattern getting cut into the 16 gauge steel here, and I'm actually using a little magnet on the end of the stick to help me grab those cut material out once they've been cut loose. Sometimes they'll not fall completely through into the catch basin below, and I don't want any of those to tip up and touch the torch tip. It is sensitive to that and would actually halt the machine because it's thinking that it's contacted metal. So I'm babysitting this thing as this cuts. It doesn't take too long. These whole panels take somewhere around 17-18 minutes of actual cut time, so it goes pretty fast. So right here I'm over at the computer. I was firing off the program, running Linux CNC to control the plasma cutter here. This is the second panel I'm cutting. There are 3 in total. That'll give me a span across the patio to give us good coverage. Leave a little bit on each side so you got some good airflow, and also you can kind of sneak through there if you need to get through for maintenance or anything along that lines. this is the second panel that's done now, so I'll show you an overhead shot of that. Looks pretty good. Now this is the third panel that's cutting away. So now I'm going to take the rough cut lumber, run a cut down the center of that, not very deep, probably only 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch deep. As it turns out, the kerf width of the blade, so that's the thickness of the blade, is just perfect for 16 gauge steel. So that's going to slide in nicely, and I can frame the steel panels and hold it in nice and tight and get the whole thing painted and mounted up securely that way. So right here, I'm just about to cut the gap in the lumber there so I can slide the metal in, but I can see visually I screwed up my measurements. Now, there's a saying, measure twice, cut once. That's for a reason. I just about screwed that one up. So now we're back in business and I can start cutting away. I grab a little piece of scrap 16 gauge metal, test it, fits in there perfect. So now we can start cutting the rest of this lumber, get that groove cut all the way down the side of each of these. On the outside, 2x4s, it just takes the one cut. On those interior pieces, it takes a cut on both sides because I'm going to have multiple panels. I have 3 privacy panels in total to put up. So right here on the ground, you can see where the metal slid into that cut that I just made, fits in there really nice. So this will allow me to mount it up and get it set in there with a nice frame. We can paint the frame, paint the metal. Now that I've got the vertical or side pieces cut, I can measure off and cut these top and bottom or horizontal pieces, and that'll complete the frame for the metal panels. So I really don't like putting lag bolts or anything like that into the stucco, and I didn't want to do that on the patio. So what I'm doing here is I'm building a little kind of a bracket that's going to go around and surround the stucco pillar. It's more, I guess, of a beam up at the top, and that'll surround it. I can screw that in once the panels are put up into place. Kind of holds the top in place, and enough weight from the panels themselves to hold it down. Should be pretty stable, and then I don't have to put any holes into the stucco. So that kickback and the wife screaming there was because the blade got bound up. There was a little bit of a bow in the lumber, and as I pushed it forward on my sled, it caught and pushed the whole sled back at me. Right here I'm pre-drilling some blocks that I can use on the back side of the privacy panel. That way the screws and the blocks themselves will hold everything into place. On the back side you won't see any of it, you won't see any of the screws. Should make for a much cleaner look. So now it's time to do a little cleanup work on the back side of these panels and on the front actually. So this is I think it's a 60 or an 80 grit flat disc. Goes through just knocking off all of the little bits of dross, which is basically some of that molten metal that's still left behind on the panels themselves. Gives a little bit of a cleanup there. Nice, smooth. Nobody will catch anything on it. So at this point I just want to make sure that these top braces are square. That way once I get this panel over to the place where we're going to mount it on the patio, I know I've got at least that part of it set up square. Then I can look at how unlevel my patio is, because there's some drainage there on the concrete, so it slopes away from the pool house itself. So I know I got to cut the legs to account for that once it's over there. So this gets the panel in, gets everything squared up, and then I'll do some fine tuning once it's in its final spot. Now with the panel held up, we can see how much I have to cut off the bottom leg there. Bottom of the leg, excuse me. That way it's nice and level. From that, then I can build from there on the rest of the panels to keep everything level and square, using that as my starting point. And right here, now you can see the little bracket that I made to go around the stucco beam. That way I'm not putting a lag bolt or anything in that. This will hold it in place. It's pretty solid actually. It doesn't wiggle around or anything. Now you can see the blocks that I'm using on the back side of it to screw everything in place, hold it in nice and tight, keeps everything out of view, and the front of the privacy screen looking nice and clean. So right here you can see we're leveling it off, and I have just a little temporary piece of wood that I'm going to screw in place that holds everything level while we're getting the side put up. Once the side's there, we confirm everything's level. Then on the back side again, well, we got the dogs coming in and joining us. They're good helpers. Not really, but they're fun to have around. You can see everything's nice and level this way, and finish off with mounting the blocks on the back to get everything screwed in tight. There you can see my son's putting that top piece in. It was a little snug, so doing a little trim work to make sure that thing fits in there. Oh, another blade width. Let's see, I think that does it. And yeah, it looks like now we've got it in there. Okay, this is pretty much the finished product right there. The only thing that I ended up doing is I ended up putting more of the rough cut lumber at the top of it, kind of those boards there. Looks like a finished beam. Once that's all painted up, it should really be finished off nice.